Brendan Martin.
Back
Doing the
up!
hey,
Back
good
up!
morning. Hey,
Yo,
it is
sister!
Friday, June
Mommy!
14th, 2024. Rob Brown, Brendan Martin, Sidelines, SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU. How dominant can you be? SEC baseball versus the ACC. It's 4-4, okay? 43 times in men's college World Series history, SEC teams have gone on and played head to head, okay? The closest to that is the Pac 12, posthumously speaking now, with 9 times. 9 times.
9 times.
9 times, okay? So look, get pen and paper handy, smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner, sync us live on the boat, in your truck, car, side by side, at the beach, canoeing. You might even have a turtle box, which is like I see behind me that I got at Hewlett and Dunn. But it's going to be a great show. Got Frank
and thanks
Duffy.
to all of our new people on Twitter watching our show.
Yeah, absolutely. The Twitter people, we love you. Thank you. Twix is what I call it. Thank you so much, all of you watching. We're here to serve and get information out to you. So get ready, get pen and paper handy, take some notes. We got Frank Duffy, Doug Dean, Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. A lot to talk about on the SEC All Sports Blitz coming right at you.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Yancey Porter batting in that leadoff position. Batter, swing batter. Yancey, how the hell are you down there in Oxford, Mississippi, Lafayette County, up there in the top of the state of Mississippi, or as they call it, the top of the SIP. But glad to have you on here with us on this Friday, talking a little bit Ole Miss and SEC on our All Sports Blitz. So got to ask you this question, man. I got the calendar out, the SEC schedule. We were talking about this last night on the Buddy Martin show. How fired up is Ole Miss, not only about the preseason hype and everything like that, that November 23rd matchup, that's going to be a big one down in the swamp. Do you think this schedule is kind of back-end loaded like it was a couple of years ago when Ole Miss got off to the 7-0 start?
Yeah, it kind of is. I wouldn't quite say, as loaded, back-end loaded as that year there in 22, but
yeah, that was ridiculous.
It definitely is back-end loaded. It's a yawner, not non-conference games at home, especially they. Sorry about that. They do play. Yeah, nice dogs.
No, I didn't know what that was. I thought that was a plate or a saucer twirling around.
No, that's one of the dogs that just stopped over the food bowls and feed me some more. But yes, it's kind of a snoozer in September that they play Wake Forest on the road, and that would be definitely one that you got to keep your eyes open for. The LSU game is where it really starts, in my opinion.
Yeah. Is there any reason at this point, anything offense, defense, special teams, and I know you're going to love this one, for any widespread panic among the Rebel faithful? I heard about you going to the Panic concert a few weeks ago with some people. They said you were having fun.
Yeah, we saw G-Man there, Gordon. It was good to see him. And
yes,
we had a big time there. But no, I think really everybody's healthy right now. Bentley's, he had all season surgery on his toe. He's 100%. He ran 20.8 miles per hour. He said just last week, so he seems to be fully raring to go. Jackson Dart had his knee cleaned up. or after last season. He says that he feels 100% now. First time in over 2 years, he says he feels fully healthy. It just kind of, everything is. You don't want to jinx it, but everything's going just as planned right now.
Well, the off season right now, you got summer sessions going on. So all the recruits, I guess most everybody's on campus in Oxford getting ready for this season that they signed, and as well as the JUCOs and the portal people. I mean, there's a lot of categories now.
Yeah, there are. I think everybody's on campus right now that I'm aware of. Deion Smith, the number one junior college player in the
Yeah.
country, the wide receiver. He's supposed to be reporting, I believe, a week from now. He had to clean up an issue with the class. He had some classes that he did everything he needed academically at the junior college, but he failed to withdraw his classes there at LSU. So he had to retake those classes there that he was there at LSU for that one semester. So
Yeah.
he's the only one that I'm aware of that is not on campus right now.
Well, I was going to say I was going to put him on the list. Brendan's keeping keeping a list of players ruled ineligible in this era of football because that list right now is zero.
Very small, very
You remember,
small.
y'all both remember back in the days of Prop 48, and I mean, people were sweating bullets, man. They were more nervous than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
Yeah, but you used to have 6, 7, 8 players every year out of every class that you were sweating it out, and for whatever reason, those days look to be gone, kind of like black and white TVs.
Yeah, it does. All the football magazines are starting to gradually come out.
Yeah,
Lindy's. I've seen Athlon's. I don't like the way Athlon's is doing the new deal. It's kind of just a paper book, like a Reader's Digest or the Old Farmer's Almanac. I like all those color pictures because as a kid, we used to wallpaper, all of us growing up, and of our teams, of the whole SEC, wallpaper the walls and the ceiling in our rooms with all this SEC stuff. They've gone cheap on us, but that's hey, Phil Steele. Now, one thing about Phil Steele's magazine, you need a magnifying glass to read that stuff.
especially me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. An electron microscope.
Yeah, I didn't understand some of Phil's. He does an outstanding job, but
Yeah.
his evaluation of Ole Miss and some of their players. I think he had Dart fourth team. All SEC. It was very, very puzzling analysis of Ole Miss this year, in my opinion.
Well, now I'm going to run by Barnes and Noble today, the bookstore. That's if the magazine's out, it's at Barnes and Noble. Now I haven't seen Phil Steele's magazine. Did he just issue something online? Because I did see his first, second, third, and fourth team All SEC rosters that came out. But the magazine itself, because
Yeah, I've not seen the magazine. There was just a
okay,
lot of debate about it on the message boards about some
but
of the
see that's
players
good.
where they. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
All right,
that's exactly what you want.
Yancey, you're one of the most cerebral people we have on this show. Brendan and I have been wanting to ask you this question. Rank that quarterback top four in the SEC because I agree with you. Dart is better than four, but give me 1, 2, 3, 4 in your humble opinion
Mm,
right now.
wow, that's a great question. I've still got to go back. I really like the way that
Yeah,
Beck just developed that second half of the season. It was amazing to me the way that he developed that second half of the season, kind of like we saw from Daniels 2 years ago, right
yeah,
at LSU. But when he just really took off last year, obviously won the Heisman, but you just saw it that year before his junior year there at LSU. I go Dart close second behind Beck, and then there's a gap. It's 1-2 there, and then you've got a pretty wide gap after those two. And I would have to go. Gosh, I mean, I just think the way that um, the new Bama staff, the way that they've developed quarterbacks, we saw what they did there at Washington. I've got a feeling that they're going to do the same thing over there at Alabama. We saw him starting to kind of get it, reading. When I say get it, I mean making quicker reads there at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
There, we know what he can do with his feet. I'm going to have to go Bama quarterback three, and then fourth. I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. So when you have to think about it, that
Yeah.
means that there's another gap, right? And,
Yeah.
it's those
There
three.
is.
Yours at Texas,
Yeah.
he's been inconsistent, but his upside is pretty high, and
Yeah.
he could end up going there in that three slot as high as even two or one, really. But I just think Texas lost the heart and soul of that defense with their defensive line coach, Bo Davis. They lost
At
their
LSU.
top, yeah, they lost their top, four defensive linemen. All went pro. I think Texas is going to be the one that really disappoints this season. Now disappoints. I'm not predicting 8-4, 7-5, but I don't see them any better than 9-3. And a lot of people pundits have them top five competing for a national championship.
Well, what happens is most people are lazy and they look out of the rearview mirror when they're picking the upcoming season. And you and I have talked about this. Bo Davis and Rodney Garner, two best defensive line coaches in college football. Uh, Bo Davis is at LSU. Maybe if he'd have come back to Alabama, Nick Saban wouldn't have left. He's that good of a coach. You take guys that he's coached over the years, um, like Quentin Williams and Marcel Darius. They didn't play, 3 or 4 years as starters. Some of those guys only started in 9 or 10 games. Bo Davis is going to make a huge difference at LSU, and Texas will feel that loss. I totally agree. So give me that 1, 2, 3 one more time in the interest of those people that may
Georgia,
just, yeah, Carson Beck, yeah,
Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas, all their quarterbacks.
okay, yeah, and without a quarterback,
Now,
it's like,
a lot of people, and look, that's doing a jump on Alabama's quarterback, right? I
yeah,
mean, look,
it
he
is,
was not, he was. I'm really impressed. I've watched a lot of film. I've gone back some on the new Alabama coach, just kind of breaking down what he's done in the past. He's kind of like Kiffin. I mean, and by
yeah,
that I mean he kind of takes what you do best and works his offense around it. I mean, we've seen Kiffin with players like Jalen Hurts and Blake Sims that quite honestly were not great throwers.
yeah,
Look what Hurts is doing in the pros right now. I would have bet the farm he would have never started an NFL game, and look what he's done. But he was not a great passer. So I mean, he used the legs and he made them good passers, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I like the way that this new Alabama coaches work with this past quarterbacks and kind of mold it what the talent is presented for him.
yeah. Well, I was talking to a friend out in Washington yesterday for a while who really knows his college football in Texas and around the country. He said the Washington Husky fans that he knows that live in and around Bellingham and Seattle and all, they despise Kalen DeBoer. They they are so mad that he left after a couple of years. Now, granted, he did some great things in those 2 years, but they're really, really upset. And now you got Jeb Fish, who's got, I think, is from Gainesville or went to school at Florida, who was at Arizona last year as their coach. That's going to be a fun storyline to watch. Yancey, I got to ask you this about the running back room at Ole Miss. You got
Yeah.
10 years ago, we'd be talking about a stacked running back room. Now we talk about stacked wide receiver room. But what Ole Miss needs, in my opinion, is to dominate on the line of scrimmage. To talk about the running backs and the guys blocking for them.
Yeah, I think what they're gonna do, and look, I mean, this is not by design. Before, of course, they would have had loved to have someone like a Quinshon Judkins talent there, where you really lean on him and kind of give a dose over there to Bentley. But Bentley is now that feature back, but I think they're going to go back to the three-headed monster and really kind
Oh,
of share the ball around
yeah.
between those three, not tire out. It seems like they got like 24 running backs now in that room, but
They do.
I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's like you thought it was over, pursuing running backs, and the next day there'd be another one, and the next day there'd be another one. But Bentley and Parrish are gonna really be, the guys that are gonna lean on. The those are guys that have been trusted. But you got to remember, Parrish played at Ole Miss for 2 years
Yeah.
before he transferred to Miami, so they know what he can do. And the wild card to me is Logan Diggs.
Yes.
He's a guy that I was really impressed with him at LSU. The question is how fast can he recover from that ACL surgery that he had back, I believe, in mid January. So,
Yeah.
it's a long season. Even if he doesn't come back until around the Egg Bowl,
Yeah.
you still got potentially 7 games left. And
Yeah.
so, like in the NFL, the difference this year and the past years is when you get towards the end of the season this year, and I'm talking about your mid playoff games. It's going to be a total different team than what you saw opening season, player wise, personnel
Yeah.
wise. There's going to be injuries all over the country, and the important thing is going to be is everybody's going to have injuries, but who do you have injured, right? And so I think Diggs is really that wild card down the road. I know that they think he's really they're excited about where he is, on his rehab right now and where he's going to be come around November. So that's really a name down the road. Logan Diggs, there, the former LSU running back.
Yeah. And I seem to, it's Ulysses Bentley the fourth, correct?
Yeah, you love that the fourth, don't you?
All right, I'm going to start calling. I've got a new name for him. You ready? There,
I,
wa-
I,
there was a
I,
there was a
I,
band that we used to hear a lot all night long at the War Eagle Supper Club in college called UB40 from Birmingham. Red
UB40.
wine. His
Yeah,
new name is UB40. That's what I'm calling Ulysses Bentley the fourth.
you love the fourth. You
I
like just saying
do.
the fourth.
I do. It's cool.
Bentley the
Yeah,
fourth.
Bentley the fourth. Yes. Tell
No,
Muffy
he's
hello. I'll see her at the club around 6ish.
Look. Bentley is one of the more underrated running backs
He
there
is.
is. I mean, he's a guy that's electrifying when he's healthy. It's just
Yeah.
keeping him healthy, right? He's kind of like a thoroughbred. He's got to be 100%. But when he is, and look, I used to say the same thing about DK Metcalf when he was at Ole Miss.
Oh my
It seemed like
goodness.
if he had a thumbnail that was scratched up, he couldn't play that game or he didn't play well. But when he was healthy, he was ready to go. So Bentley is he's going to be one that I think he says he feels better than he has since he's been at Ole Miss health wise, and I know he's itching and ready to go.
Yancey, you like going to the beach. All of y'all do. Look at this new
Sure.
thing I got. It's called the Turtle Box. You can get these at Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. This thing is waterproof. Okay. Look, I'm an adult, and Audrey, when I wear nice clothes, she goes, "Don't wear your nice clothes; you'll get them dirty." Like a kid, you know. The Turtle Box. I don't think even the adults can screw that thing up. As long as you click the top, the music on there is unreal. You could hear the Widespread Panic. You could listen to the Grateful Dead, which, by the way, there's a Grateful Dead channel that I listen to when I'm driving. I'm not a Deadhead. I don't know all their stuff. Row Jimmy Row, I like that. I like Ripple. It's very calming.
Tennessee Jed. I mean, I
Hey,
think there's a lot of dead songs you'd like.
yeah, there's some really good songs, but Yancey, I'm going to tell you. But get you a Turtle Box, people, and also all the boots, 25% off through Father's Day. So get out there today or tomorrow. All the boots, over 7,000 pairs at Hewlett and Dunn, and they've got duck heads, Filson. They've got tons of stuff on sale right now. These Acres Down South shirts of all these SEC, ACC, and Big 12 schools. Yancey got Mr. Go Tigers, go Tigers, Frank Duffy on here with us right now. Yancey Porter Rebel Yell Hotline. Frank, you want to say hello to
Well, I was going
a
to
good
give
man Yancey?
I was going to give Yancey a nice hotty toddy till he started talking about Logan Diggs. That's the first thing I'm hearing when I get on. I mean, come on. It's bad. It's bad enough I'm sitting out here on the Pacific left coast, which, by the way, I don't think the Turtle. God knows what they be playing from it out here. This is a bizarre place out here on the coast of Oregon, man. It's some crazy thoughts going on out here, man. I'm telling you. Ron and I decided that we're going to come up here. She's always wanted a bucket list to see, how beautiful the coastline is of Northern California and Oregon. Wow. I've got about 3 more days of this, and I'm getting back on a plane. I'm going to go sit at the Gulf Coast where I fit in much better with my SEC hat.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Oregon is. I've been dying to get out to Oregon. I'm jealous, actually. Frank, how is the LSU running back room? I mean, Frank Wilson down there is kind of like Derek Nix was at Ole Miss. I think Derek was at Ole Miss for about 147 years. It feels like that Frank's been there that long too. Yeah. Is he still the running back coach down there, by the way?
Yeah. Well, here's our problem. It's not the coaches. We've got a vacant room right now. You talk about Logan Diggs leaving. I mean, we went from one of our absolute strengths, which was 8 men in the running back room, 8 really good, capable running backs, down to 2. Now, I think Caleb Jackson is going to be the man. I think this kid, as a sophomore, is going to be phenomenal. But thankfully, John Emery came back out of the transfer portal, and it was kind of funny. Ron and I were at the LSU graduation to watch our daughter walk down the aisle with her degree, and there was John Emery getting his degree about 5 people ahead of Ryan. So I wound up, my camera was already, so I took a picture of John who was coming out, and he got a wonderful applause, even though LSU knew he was, our community knew he was transferring. Got a wonderful applause. I think our applause actually got him to come back. I think he rethought it, realized that there was a lot of love at LSU, and came back. So that was a huge help. So right now our running back room, we've only got 3 scholarship running backs to my knowledge that were on the roster. We lost 5. Logan Diggs, 1 transferred to you guys by way of Notre Dame. I'm telling you what, sometimes, honest to goodness, you can't tell where a kid is and where he's going. I mean, hey, if you like a kid, hang on. He might be coming to you by next semester. That's what it's like right now.
Hey, the Yancey and Frank, let me throw something at you. First off, Shoney, what is the Turtle Box? It's a music box. It'll sync to your phone, all your music. It is absolutely the most unbelievable sound I've ever heard out of a box. And you can take it to the beach in the water. It floats. Just close the little, seal it, and it's unbelievable. It is the most powerful music box I've ever done seed. All right, here's a question I gotta ask both of y'all. And Frank, you just brought this up. I love that point. As fans, we've got to be telling our student athletes, and you pick the sport, how much we love them being at our school. When you see them, go up and say hello, introduce yourself. You might be able to help them get a job. I think the biggest problem is that there's, and you watch Daddy Ball as a kid. There was a handful of kids that the moms and dads, took care of, but they didn't develop the people behind them. And a lot of those people just gave up on sports in general. Now, you got to hearken and hunker down and be tougher than that. But we've got to be telling them, hey, man, stick it out. Even if you don't make it, I'll help you get a job in your profession.
Oh, absolutely.
If you think we need to be doing that. I mean, where people act like you don't have control, you will get out of life what you accept. I promise you. Frank, that's I have not heard someone say that. Then that reminds me also of when Eric Ramsey walked across to get his degree at Auburn, and his wife flipped off the crowd. That was really classy. He will not get many jobs in the state of Alabama.
well, look, I mean, to Yancey's point, Tommy Robinson and Brian Kelly and Frank Duffy, we all better be recruiting. Look, I'm taking credit for Sean Washington coming from Georgia because I'm flying back. My daughter was in a ball, so I had to go back to New Orleans. we had a ball the night before the SEC championship game when LSU played Georgia 2 seasons ago. So we had a ball that night. So I had to fly back early the next day. Well, I'm on the phone on the plane with Sean. He's a row up, great New Orleans kid, but he's got his Georgia gear on. He's flying back to go to the game in Georgia. So we're just sitting there BSing, yucking it up. So I take a picture of him. All the LSU people are coming off. Hey, good luck, young man. Good luck, young man. Good luck, young man. What does he do in the transfer portal? He's our new defensive lineman. I'm taking full credit for that. I was nice to him. We were talking. We had a great time. I'll send the picture to Brendan. Everybody's got to be recruiting at all times. You got to be talking up your school. You know, and it's that love of the front of the laundry that might turn some kids sometime. And so it's interesting. It's the wild, wild west right now, Yancey, as you know. And look, it's whatever it takes to get people to come. It's no different than, Musselman going out to USC, and his new recruiting video location is out on the beach, just south of here. They're showing the recruits how awesome it is. What was said back in the 60s? By all means necessary. That's what recruiting has come down to, and it's not recruiting them to get in. As Doug Dean, who just joined us, will tell you, you got to recruit them to stay on the plains or at the Grove or in Baton Rouge. You got to be doing it. It's a game.
Yeah. Doug, Yancey Porter's on with us, Rebel Yell Hotline, Frank Duffy. We're talking about, Frank said at the graduation for his daughter, John Embry was about 5 people ahead, and the crowd gave him a big ovation. And that's powerful stuff. I mean, these people, I think, Yancey, we lost Doug, but comment on that. I mean, and you see these guys, I know you know a lot of these players.
Yeah, it's it's just you either adapt to the times or you get left behind.
Yeah.
It's not changing. The toothpaste is out of the tube, so to speak, and that's where we are. And you think it's crazy now. I told you before, several of the states that passed where the universities can now donate to the collectives. We all know the collectives are on their last legs. Probably the universities will take those over in a matter of years, a few years, but the money's even going to increase even more. It's going to be wild. I think the trend, if they would have just kept it where you can transfer once without penalty, and then the second time you have to sit out a year, I think that would have really solved a lot of problems. And that single rule right there really just threw the landscape to total chaos.
Ready, fire, aim. Ready, fire, aim.
Doug, jump in here. This is I like this conversation.
Yeah, Yancey, good to see you. Hotty Toddy and Duff. LSU's still alive in baseball, right? I haven't been keeping up.
Oh, shame on you. Shame on you. Hey, that's
there with Auburn.
Hey, that's defending national champion to you, at least for 2 more weeks.
That's an old Miss said last year.
But Doug, my liver's going to feel a lot better this summer.
That's right. What about Florida getting in with the worst pitching staff they've had in school history, and they got into the World Series? That defies logic. I still can't believe that.
Duff, I'll buy you a bottle of Woodford for that snarky remark. So, Rob, I was thinking again, knowing that the great Yancey Porter and Duff, as I call him, we're going to be on the show. Never has there been a better time for me to talk trash in the summer about Ole Miss and LSU. Auburn does not get to. Yancey, why is Ole Miss dodging Auburn this year? Y'all got a big enough target on your back, I guess.
Look, not having Alabama and Auburn on that schedule is it just doesn't feel right. It really doesn't.
Strange.
I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I'll be honest.
Well, I have. I have been effusive.
Doug,
I have been effusive in my. Sorry, go ahead, Duff.
No,
Go ahead, Duff.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We keep time. I think I'm on a lag. I think I'm on a lag here out on the Pacific Coast. It's 3 hours is a little tough, right? It's a little tough. No, I was just going to say, to Doug's point, it was so bizarre. I mean, for every other year, my RV literally could drive itself to the corner of Lem Morrison and Donahue right outside of Auburn's campus. And I'll never forget, Ron and I were sitting there driving I think we were coming back from California when the thing had the blowout. And I kept saying, okay, so we're going this year. And of course, we're going to Auburn. I was talking 10 minutes about preparing my Auburn road trip this year before it hit me again. Hell, we're not going there again. It's so bizarre. The ritualistic, not from just a game standpoint or a college standpoint, but from the fan standpoint. We're used to our twice annual trips. Yeah, for Ole Miss and Auburn and Alabama not to be that round robin, that bloodbath that Ole Miss used to have to go on with Auburn and Alabama, and then of course Alabama and Auburn. We've kept our rivalry with Ole Miss, but not having with Auburn, it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like you get ready to enter in the fall without having that trip on the schedule.
Well, it's not right. We can agree on that, and yet, I'm the more it sinks in with me, and I can really celebrate adding two unbelievable brands like Oklahoma and Texas to the mix. And now, if we were not being awarded the 12-team playoff, frankly, I would be pissed off about the SEC being asked to raise the degree of difficulty like that. But so this year, I'm going to talk as much trash about Ole Miss and LSU as the law will allow. The only reason that the two would meet is the unlikely prospect of both teams doing well enough to somehow playoff and meet, which would be highly unlikely. I do like what I'm seeing with Hugh Freeze in recruiting, especially. He needs to show that the fruits of that in year two, which he's been famous for doing in year two. So that's what I will be watching with great interest. Hey, Yancey, I want to ask you to talk, if you haven't already, tell us the vibe of the Ole Miss, the hotty toddy fan base. You wanted expectations, brother.
You got them, and you got them.
You for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's
built a team on paper is manageable, but am I right that average Ole Miss team playoff or bust? Is that fair?
Oh yeah, and to me, honestly, you got to do something once you get in the playoffs. With this type of roster and this type of experience that Ole Miss has. I mean, you go down the line. Their top 10 offensive linemen in the rotation, 9 are seniors, some are 5th, 6th, 7th. Top 5 wide receivers, 4 are seniors, 5th, 6th, 7th guys. Running backs, top 5 running backs there. They're all seniors. Tight ends, top 3 tight ends, they're all seniors. It's just it's not only the talent, but how much experience all these guys have.
Yeah.
So, quarterback, obviously, he's in his 4th year. You go down the line, the guys that they're leaning on are guys that are proven winners and have a lot of experience, a lot of snaps. So, yeah, it's not only getting to the playoffs. I'm sure some Ole Miss fans would just be satisfied with that. But I think for the majority speaking, you got to do something when you get in there, at least get to the semifinals.
Yeah.
The stars are more aligned now than ever. You have to go back before the Morning Star was seen over Drew, Mississippi for all the positive setup that Ole Miss has this year.
Yeah. Just hearing Drew and all that, I'm telling you, when Arch finally takes over that quarterback slot there from Texas, there's going to be a lot of cringing going on in Oxford, Mississippi, regardless.
We have shots fired.
Yeah, it just a Manning somewhere other than Ole Miss. It's just it feels very, very dirty.
Yancey, you asked me. This is kind of Captain Obvious a little bit, but I think Ole Miss almost has to run the record to 6-0 coming out of the gate. That the final one there would be in Columbia, South. You can't take any SEC team for granted. We've seen that unless you're a Georgia that just overwhelms people. Alabama's had some of those years, but then after that road trip with South Carolina, obviously you go to Baton Rouge, so back-to-back road games. You almost, you don't have to win the LSU road game, but if you drop that one, it puts an enormous pressure on you, arguably, to beat Oklahoma. Can't drop your guard against Arkansas, and then you get Georgia at home. So people that are saying you have an easy schedule are not looking closely enough.
No, because Ole Miss has struggled at Arkansas tremendously. They haven't had a lot of success against LSU wherever they played them in the last 10 or so years. So really, the way that I look at it, if you count Georgia as a loss, I think it's going to be a really just a barn burner right down to the end. But let's say you lose Georgia, you got to split that LSU Florida road games, and I throw Florida in there as well. I think Florida's going to surprise a lot of people. They're going to be toughened up by the time they play Ole Miss. They got a tremendous schedule, and again, that buzz is going to be around, about Kiffin, and if Billy is not doing as well as the Florida fans hope they are, and I think Billy and them are going to have an extra little motivation to try to put a whipping on Kiffin. So it's going to be, they're going to be walking it to a beat down stuff down there in Gainesville. So really, to me, I think Oklahoma, honestly, I think they handled them pretty handily. I think it's, the Georgia, really, that at Florida, at LSU, you got to split those games, get to 10-2. I don't think 10-2 would be anybody doing jumping jacks over that, but it'd get them in the playoffs, and that's what it's all about now. And then you try to make your run once you're inside the playoffs.
Okay, if you win it, let's say you don't get a bye in the first round, you could potentially play 17 games as a team. This is uncharted territory. We've seen 15, but the one thing that I've taken from this conversation is the number of fourth and fifth, and now we say sixth and seventh year guys. There's a huge difference between 18-year-olds and 23 and 24-year-olds. In fact, it's grown men against pups. Yeah. That's why I think this Ole Miss team is different. A lot of people are saying, remember 2009 when y'all were top 5, you went on the road to South Carolina and played that Spurrier team and got beat. Yep. This is a completely different team. That's I like what Doug says about the expectations. And Yancey, I know you got a bunch of stuff to do. Didn't mean to keep you this long, but love having you on here with us, and we'll do it again next week. Tell people how they can keep up with you. And I love the Rebel Yell hotline, Monday nights, Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk Mississippi. But you put out a lot of good stuff, and you're definitely worth following.
Thank you. Yeah, and I hope everybody and your listeners and on the show have a very blessed day. And just go to @Yancey Porter, and anywhere you want to pick up the state of Mississippi and Tennessee every Monday night from 6 to 7. You can turn us on Super Talk and the state of Mississippi, and WHBQ, the state of Tennessee.
All right, one more question from Frank. Sorry about that.
I've got one question for you, Yancey, as an Ole Miss
Frank.
Rebel. All right, so here you go.
Look, we got to go to an SEC baseball tournament sometime together too, Frank.
Let's go, man.
I want to jump in that Winnebago.
Hey, I still got that gumbo waiting on you from that LSU Ole Miss game 2 years ago. You got to come back here. I got one question for you, Yancey. Yes, we shared an SEC West championship, if you call it a championship, back in 2003. I was in the stadium this past year when we put up a combined 1,050 points together, going back and forth in Vaught Hemingway. And I saw y'all's group, were celebrated. I didn't want to bring up to my friends next to me who are Ole Miss fans that we won the national championship that year, but I did enjoy their West championship. Shots fired. But no, I've got a question. And I like for Doug to chime in on what he thinks as well. What would be more important to the Ole Miss fan base? A win of the SEC, going to Atlanta and winning that game, or possibly winning at least 2 games in the national playoff? I would argue I would argue if you gave that to a Rebel fan today, I think they would prefer the SEC championship, a trip to Atlanta, and hoisting that more than the at least starting of the 2 wins in the college playoff. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, I mean, you look, Ole Miss has never been to Atlanta, and I think they're the distinction with maybe Kentucky and Vanderbilt, and I don't know. I
They
mean,
want out
even
of
this,
that fraternity.
the what now?
They want out of that fraternity.
Yeah, they won't out of that fraternity. Now, if you told me 2 wins in the playoffs and they don't advance any farther, I think that probably the majority of the Ole Miss fan base would take that SEC championship. I think it's been since 1968 since they won the SEC.
63. Yeah.
63. So way back in the 60s before I was even born. So, yeah, it's I would think that's a safe play there. And yes, it makes the Ole Miss fans cringe seeing that SEC co-West football banner with LSU at '03. Don't worry about it, Frank. I know y'all laugh about it. Look, as much as y'all giggle about it, there's as many Ole Miss fans that are spitting. I've had a lot of people say, "What do you think? Do you think I'd get in trouble if I ripped that thing down and burn it?" So yeah, there's a lot of people that do not like that as well over there in Hotty Toddy Land.
Well, I was giggling up till the 59-minute mark of last year's game.
Look,
But,
that D line is going to really be turned around there with Bo Davis. I'm very interested. It's all going to come down to LSU. I still expect them to add another running back somewhere. There'll be some grad transfer from somewhere that'll come in there and give you a little depth. It's going to come down to that quarterback position. How well
Yeah.
does that position play for LSU, in my opinion? And that's it, guys. Look, again,
Doug's got
everybody
one
have a
more
blessed
question for
day.
you.
Yes, sir.
Doug's got one more for you, though. Hang
Yeah.
on. Doug, go ahead. Doug has a question.
You there?
Doug, yeah, we're here.
Yeah, the audio's been infuriating. It's probably on my end. I'll try to figure it out with Brendan later. But now that Yancey's gone, it sounds like we've got a clean connection. So maybe it was on his end.
Yancey, you there?
I'm still here. I'm still here.
You're right.
You would think so, being in Mississippi. We're kind of behind in everything.
Well, I think
actually our internet connection is pretty good over here.
I think it's the communists out here in Oregon that are tapping my phone. Is I think what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, what I was saying, your hypothetical of what would Ole Miss fans as a majority prefer, that winning an SEC championship game or making a couple of game run in a 12-team playoff. And I think that if they win the SEC championship, I can't see a scenario they're not in the 12-team playoff.
Oh, yeah.
So I dispute the premise of your question. Why not, like that little meme with the cute little girl? Why can't we have both? And so I do think I don't want to suggest that Ole Miss and especially Lane Kiffin are not gutty and courageous and they will take on any comers. But I would advise any team against a rematch with Georgia in Atlanta if you can help it.
Might be the easier way in. You're right, Doug.
Yeah, but there's that possibility that Ole Miss could play Georgia 3 times in 6 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean that's not right.
Wow.
But look, there's been scenarios played out where the 6 plays the 12. Well, you know who the 12 is? It's the G5 automatic bid. So you're looking at a Liberty or maybe a Memphis State or someone like that, a home game. I'm not saying that the 6th seed would lose that game, but it's very highly unlikely. So if you excuse me, a 5 plays to 12. If you're that 5 hole there, you got a really good route to get to that Final Four.
Yeah, I just think right now the thought of 16 or 17 games, like Doug and Frank have alluded to, that right there, you better have a lot of players. And all these guys that are leaving, if you don't have 5 or 6 running backs that are good to go, it's not like it used to be. You maybe 2 or 3 could have gotten you through it, but not those extra 3 or 4 games. This This is going to be very NFL-like. It's going to be survival of the fittest, last man standing. Yancey, awesome stuff. Let's do it again next week. Thanks for going along with us, okay?
Thank you, guys. God
All
bless.
right. You bet. God bless you. Have a great day. Doug and Frank, those are both great questions. I know a lot of Ole Miss fans, a ton of them, and historically they've been happy 7-5, 8-4, and they look at Auburn and LSU and Alabama and these other Florida or whatever and say, y'all are horrible. You know, if you don't win, you're furious. And I'm like, yeah, but then you get to where if you don't win by enough and you don't look good enough doing it. Okay, this Florida situation, I want Doug's thoughts on it first. Billy Napier, we're going to have next Friday one of his very good friends on the show with us as a guest. It's going to be a lot of fun. Billy Napier didn't get a football lobotomy on the way to Florida. They fired Dan Mullen because he wasn't recruiting, and there were lots of problems. And I'm not saying this because we got we got all the fans listening to this show, but Doug, kind of make some sense out of that as only you can because you're a great writer.
No, I don't have a crystal ball on this. I want to be clear because I've got some good Florida friends, and I just don't. Since Urban Meyer left the building down there, I don't really have any hate for the Florida Gators. They have the opportunity to change that if they get their swagger back. And they were, when Spurrier was there in his heyday, most of us went through an evolution in which you had to hate the guy in the visor for a while because he liked to run the score up. But once we understood Spurrier's view, which I now like, is listen, if you don't want the score run up, play defense.
That's right.
That's
right.
So savage. As for Billy Napier, what I've heard on the show is, guys, I don't know if y'all are just trying to be nice or it's hope is your strategy for Napier. I think the end comes crashing down in Gainesville this year. I'm not wishing that. And Yancey might be correct that they will surprise people finally getting their systems working, getting better quarterback play. And there are a lot of things to fix. But they've got a schedule that is
brutal.
We had a guy, didn't we, that this year and next year, it was Dennis Dodd, who quoted a credible schedule degree of difficulty analyst who said Florida is about to have what can be proved mathematically would be considered the toughest 2-year schedule, not in the last 10 years, in the history of college football. And so, there's a case that Florida could lose 5 or 6 games and be smart and keep Billy Napier and take into account what they're going through on the schedule, keep recruiting, pour some NIL money, go buy a team if you don't have one. But, man, I look at his schedule. I think there's going to be enormous pressure on the decision makers in Gainesville to say, if we don't hit the refresh button here, we're going to start losing fan support.
Doug, I'm going to throw this one at you. Compare Brian Harsin, arguably the worst hire in the history of hires. Okay. Terrible fit, didn't believe in recruiting, didn't understand the South. Okay. After Auburn didn't even give him 2 years, which was 2 years too long. And that was a spite hire by Alan Green as kind of a, up yours to the Auburn boosters. And that was disgraceful. And you know what? Alan Green ought to be ashamed of himself for doing that. But I'll tell you what, I think that if you look what Tennessee did after they got rid of Fulmer. They had Kiffin for 1 year, 3 years of 3-star Derek Dooley, 5 years of Butch Jones, and then the Jeremy Pruitt deal. I think Florida would be, and I'm not saying this just because Brendan's a Gator. I think you're crazy. The guy's recruiting. Now, maybe some people say he might just be one of these guys who's a great recruiter who can't coach. But he's got to get a staff together. He's got to get an offensive coordinator. There's some things like that. But I would be this schedule, this is a term Roman Harper used on the show Wednesday. He said he and Cole Kubelik, they were talking about the schedules, and it's a term they use called logo fever. You look at the logos outside. Here it is, June 14th. Things are as they are. But by the time they play each other, Doug, I think things will be different on both sides. And for Florida, their quarterback room with Graham Mertz as the starter with DJ Lagway pushing him, that's a dynamic right there. That's a wild card because that makes the whole team better when you've got legit competition.
Well, sometimes the very difficult decision to renew a contract, or fire a head football coach, it's not as straightforward as what were the wins and losses. Our standard is to win. It used to be to win the SEC East or West and play for a conference championship. That's out the window now. So I think it's possible with Florida's schedule that the calculus could look more like in November or December. It could look more like, did Billy win every game he was supposed to win?
Yeah.
And I've said it before, circle October 5th, and I would never rehire Gus Malzahn, but in a one-game elimination, Gus is a dangerous coach. We've seen it. We've seen it before. He'll pull some crap out of his rear offensively. So that's a dangerous one. But Billy's got to win every supposed to, and he's got to get a signature win. I think he can have 4 or 5 losses and get another year. But where on that schedule, whether it's opening Miami, that doesn't really ring any bells for me. Beating Tennessee and Knoxville, you're not going to beat Georgia and Jacksonville. If he beats Georgia, he's back. But
yeah,
but I think he's got to have.
He's governor.
Don't lose. Don't lose any that you're favored, and get at least one signature win. Unless he drops 6 or 7 games, then the turn out the lights, the party's over.
Yeah. But to your point, Doug,
that's sing that I can sing it.
Yeah, sing it.
But to your point, Doug, you're exactly right. The ones he's. By the way, wasn't that the greatest thing on Monday nights when he just launched into that? It was awesome. But to Doug's point, you're right. The ones he's supposed to win, that might be 6. He's supposed to lose 6. So if he wins the ones he's supposed to win, it's still not going to be an impressive number. And you can just hear those Bull Gators up there, up in that frosty, nice, air-conditioned upper suite area of Ben Hill Griffin Stadium.
Yeah,
it's going to come down to how many times a couple of them Bull Gators slam on their cocktail table, and if their bourbon goes off, of whether they're going to keep him or not. And let me tell you something. If he's sub 500 going into that Florida State game, and Florida State they hang one on him, he's done. He's cooked. There's no. I don't think there's any way he comes back from that.
Yeah.
Underneath 500, and especially if it's a couple games underneath 500, I just don't see them carrying it. And look, I think it'll be a wrong move, because what are you gonna do? What's the old saying? You don't fire the guy until you know who his replacement. Who's gonna go to Florida? That's a grease fire right now.
Well, it's a great job, but if you keep doing it every 2 or 3 years, granted, Auburn pulled the plug, but they waited too long on Harsin. He damaged Auburn big time. Gus wasn't recruiting offensive linemen, but Harsin just was the most alienating personality. Imagine, I know a donor who told me he was on the field before the LSU game in Auburn. Their family gives a lot of money to Auburn. Harsin didn't even come over and meet him or thank him. And that man went over to him and said, to his face, he said, "This is why you ain't gonna be the coach here next year, buddy."
Y'all beating us in Tiger Stadium was probably one of the worst things that could have happened. It prolonged it for.
I want Doug's response
3
on
months.
that one. Yeah, Doug.
First of all, Rob, I love you, Rob, but you're pissing me off talking about Brian Harsin on a Friday.
I'm sorry.
That was 2 years ago. Let it go. I will not come on this show if you talk about Taterhead. All right, I'm not doing it. He's kind of a legendary OC from that big monumental upset of Oklahoma, and we now know that was the head coach making some of those calls, because Brian Harsin, in an Iron Bowl that was there for the taking, 2021, it goes to overtime. He's got a chance to have a 2-point conversion call, just like in the Fiesta Bowl, and he didn't have the spine with an injured quarterback, TJ Finley, who wasn't very good anyway. and you got the play there. We saw later he had the play in his back pocket. He didn't have the testicular fortitude, Duff.
I can't argue with that. You're exactly right. That was such a bad fit hire, and honest to goodness, everybody knew it. Auburn people knew it when he was hired. It was like, that doesn't make sense. Now, Caleb DeBoer. I mean, are we looking at more of a Harsin, or are we looking more of a Hugh Freeze? Because that's going to be really interesting at Tuscaloosa. You know, what's the old saying? If you ignore history, one might come along and repeat it. Another West Coast guy.
You know, is there, like I've said before, and all three of us have got some good, classy Bama friends, but probably less so Duffy. Although Atlanta's got a contingent there. You don't live in Red Stick. My good Bama friends, whose football IQ surpasses mine on many things, the overall take I'm hearing is optimism about what DeBoer can do, and what everyone admits is a high degree of difficulty, if only because you're following the GOAT in Nick Saban. And, you know, how well will Coach Saban manage it? I think he will be as good as you could ask of any outgoing head coach, because Nick is that smart and he's a class act. But I think that this year it won't tell you everything about how the chapter will be written over 3 or 4 years for Kalen DeBoer. But I think we will either see some bumpiness, a little bit of a drop-off by Alabama. And I don't mean that disrespectfully whatsoever. It's almost normal with the disruption and chaos. Some of the players transfer, like Caleb Downs, man, that is a difference maker on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
And he won't be there. And they've got other players, I get it. But, if you look at Alabama's schedule, they finally get Georgia on the regular season schedule. But it's in Tuscaloosa. That's a toss-up game, if you ask me. You never know about Tennessee in Knoxville. Mizzou, a week later, comes to Tuscaloosa. And then, of course, they go to Baton Rouge, Duffy. And I don't know if y'all are built this year. You had a lot to fix defensively. Maybe Brian Kelly is on his way to that. As for LSU, they will really, really impress me if they have an improved year, only because if you look at the Heisman Trophy winner, man, that is a crap load of production that won some games despite an abysmal defense.
Malik Neighbors, that was a huge loss as well. I think this is going to be a rebuilding year for us. It all comes down to what Nuss does, but on offense, but the defense, we've got to get back to some semblance of LSU defense. Let me tell you, we wasted a Heisman Trophy winner, and statistically, as good of an offense as we had in 2019, which was off the charts. So, yes, we have to do that. Going back to the Alabama comment, I'll tell you, I hear a lot of whistling in the graveyard by a lot of my Alabama buddies. It's going to be interesting if he, like you said, Doug, if they get off to some turbulence, it's going to be interesting because they've had it good for a long time. And take it from someone who knows what life is like when you've lost the greatest coach in college football history. It's ugly. And you look over at Les Miles, and she's a good wife, and she's sitting there, and she's dutiful, and she makes you Wheaties in the morning. But you look over at her, and she's got those curlers in her hair and her house coat on. And there's
Mildred.
There's the supermodel out there winning national championships. Let me tell you something, Alabama fans. Look, admitting there's a problem is the first step. That's all I'm going to tell y'all. And if y'all need some self-help through this period, us LSU fans will be glad to give it to you. But let me tell you something. There will be no sympathy. There will be no sympathy coming from the quarters of the prettiest village on the plain or the bayou. I can tell you that.
No, there won't. Like we've said, in somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but some very real emotionally, our long national nightmare finally ended with Coach Saban's retirement. But here's the thing people won't talk about, but it could very well be, Coach Saban hasn't cut the nets now. That's a basketball metaphor. He hasn't
Yeah.
hoisted the trophy in a couple or 3
Yeah.
years anyway. And so Saban could be coaching this season and himself still lose he could still lose to Georgia regular season. He could lose in Baton Rouge. He
Sure.
could lose in Norman, Oklahoma. You talk about this part was kind of unfair to the Crimson Tide. They go to Norman, Oklahoma 7 days before they host Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and that's unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I see with Alabama possibly Ty Simpson being the quarterback before it's all over. I think he's more like what Kalen DeVore likes to do. Austin Mack is a skinny 17, 18-year-old freshman. He ain't ready to go. I'm going to try to get Dave Cody and just he's working on a guy that covers Washington, the Huskies, to come on the show with us so we can kind of do a cross-examination. But I think both of y'all are on to it. And I will say this about Gus. You know, once you're part of the family, you're always welcome at Thanksgiving and all the holidays. He's going to retire, he said, in Auburn. The man loved Auburn. That other guy, we won't name him, and then for fairness to Doug, Gus loves Auburn, and he's got a lot of friends there. Frustration, yeah. I got to ask y'all something. Did y'all see that? Doug, go ahead. Doug, yeah, jump in, Doug.
Well, I just wanted to, because you've got some great Crimson Tide listeners, and I wanted to take we've been taking a little poking, a little playful fun at how it may go for Alabama this year and in a few years going out. But I want to flip the same coin over and say, if Kalen DeBoer comes in here and he's got talent, he's got a roster.
Oh, yeah,
there's probably a few holes he would like to improve. But and that would entail almost certainly Milrose got to have a big year. But if Alabama goes out there and let's say runs the table regular season, or which is unlikely for any of us, or they only lose one of the regular season games, you get a mulligan, and they compete and run deep into the playoff, even if they don't get to or win the national championship, which is 2 or 3 games. If you're in the top 4, then I will be depressed. I know Duff will. I'll say, man, Allah clearly does not love Auburn or LSU.
Yeah.
Guys are reloading. They're defying gravity, reloading and running the table and possibly winning a national championship. If they do that, Duff, I'm going to become a soccer fan, I guess.
Well, if you look at the blue chip index, which is the measure of 4-year rosters of 4 and 5 stars that you sign, Bama's still up there. It's Georgia, Bama, Ohio State.
He did do a good job of keeping the floodgates from opening up after Saban left. He did a good job with that.
Yeah, they had 29 guys leave last year, but some of them were going to be gone anyway. Then they had 2 of the freshmen in that signing class bounced out of there. We know about that. Quarterback Sano went to Ohio State, and Caleb Downs is gone. And then they had a defensive player go back to Florida. Getting back to Florida, both of y'all, and Doug hinted on it, it's the way you fight. How you fight is how you live. RumbleBoxingGym.com, one of our sponsors. But it's the way Florida looks in their games. If they look like they're making progress and they're fighting the full 60, then you do. But if it looks like that team has just checked out, then anything is possible, Doug.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what you have to look at.
Yeah,
because when you lose when you lose the team, and I think what I'm seeing with Alabama is still Alabama. That roster's loaded. You've got a new coach coming in, and then what you've got to overcome in the locker room is the factions of the guys that go, man, I didn't come here to play for that guy. I came here to play for Nick Saban. You got to get everybody to believe and to buy in. So that's going to be the key. But I had someone on the show the other day, I don't know if y'all heard it, said they think this staff is better than the staff Nick Saban had last year. I mean, that's a bold statement. Anybody want to take a jab at that?
I don't know enough about it.
This Alabama staff?
Yeah, he said Alabama staff. Yeah.
Which staff, Rob?
Alabama.
This year's Alabama staff. We had a guest on the show this week who felt like this year's staff is better than last year's staff at Alabama. That's a bold statement.
I don't, again, we have to be careful because I'm the enemy, Alabama fans. Why should they want to listen to what I have to
No,
say
you're
about
objective.
that question?
You're
But
good.
I'll take about it anyway. When I just look at what Saban was going to hire DJ Durkin, who is now Auburn's defensive coordinator, and Durkin, say what you want about his tragic outcome at Maryland, but he is one hell of a defensive coordinator. Saban doesn't hire, lousy guys. Some of them don't always work out, but so I think Alabama, the guy they brought in from South Alabama as DC, he's going to have to show me that he can coach a defense at an elite level in the SEC. In those really, it's only going to matter. Alabama will overwhelm all but two or three of their opponents, but in those games that are more small single-digit betting lines, or Alabama's even potentially an underdog in one or two of them. That's when you find out how good this staff is.
Yeah. Doug,
and by the way, be careful about hiring an underqualified defensive coordinator. I have a little knowledge in this area.
Whoa. Well, what happens if you go get a guy who's been in the NFL for a long time and they've not kept up with the changes in college football? That's a real problem because
and a linebacker coach. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Going to come now step in to be a DC on a college level?
I'm gonna play the last 10 minutes or so of the show. I'm gonna play bullet point with both of y'all back and forth. Great topics of conversation. And Doug, I'll throw this at you real quick. What's more important now for SEC teams? Having a deep running back room, deep wide receiver room?
Gosh, great question. I think I'm not equivocating or evading your question. I don't mean to. I think the answer to that lies heavily in what kind of quarterback do you have? And if you've got so you'd like to have both and be agnostic about whether you're going to run or throw the ball. There's a great Hugh Freeze quote. Somebody wanted to ask him about what kind of run-pass ratio are you going to run? Because Auburn has been seemingly scared to throw the ball, especially downfield, intermediate, past 20 yards. And his answer was brilliant, and it was just the truth. It probably sounded snarky to the reporter, but he says, I don't know that. We're running RPOs. The defense is going to decide whether we run or throw the ball. Yeah. And if they bite on if they yang this and we're going to yang that, and we got to get to the point where we're equally our quarterback and coaches. And remember, they're going to have headset. Peyton Thorne is going to have Hugh Freeze and Derek Nix in his ear all game, I think, at least up to the ball snap. So getting that quarterback confident that is as ready to run the ball himself, pull it down, hand off, fake a handoff and throw to that on a wheel route, throw it downfield, and he's definitely going to have a superior wide receiver room. So I think in modern football, I would want to have at least a serviceable running back room. They're a threat to gain 10 or 12 yards if you don't, load the box. But I think my first order of business would be to have wide receivers that stretch the field and because that's going to open everything else up. And now you have got to be able to win a game 42-38. So you're going to have wide receivers.
Yeah. Frank?
2014, Frank would have said running back room in 5 seconds. 2024, Frank, wide receiver room. I've seen it. I for myself, you've got to have it in this day and age in the SEC. When you're giving up 40 some odd points to Ole Miss, you better have some wide receivers.
Yeah. If you look at Ole Miss last year, that shootout back September 30th, that was unbelievable with LSU. Those are tough games to win. Ole Miss is built differently this year, Doug. That's going to be fun to watch. Yancey said Ole Miss feels like their coaches feel like they have 12 defensive linemen they can trust. We all know you want to win and get to the playoff, you better be 2 or 3 deep on your front 7, Doug Dean.
No doubt.
And for maybe there's a Mississippi State fan or 30 tuning in, and I don't say this to be smart ass to hotty toddy nation, but just it's this instinct. The longer I live, you get all these facts in your head and logic are fine, but there comes a point where there's this little voice in your gut you listen to, and it's usually right. And my instinct is thing in Ole Miss's DNA that they will win the big games. They might beat Georgia at home, but there's going to be some game like a head scratcher. How did you lose that one? Kentucky or someone. And so I'm going to be cheering on, since we don't play them, Ole Miss to rise above that, to transcend that historical factor that we've seen before. Kiffin's certainly capable of it. He's capable of annihilating everybody they face, with the possible exception of Georgia, but that's in Oxford. I might want to go to that game.
Yeah.
So next week, Rob, I'll save it for Friday. I'm going to be making a fearless, and I will catch all kinds of hell for it, forecast of a season for Hugh Freeze in his second year that will have Auburn fans ecstatic, and it will have your listeners probably that don't bleed orange and blue, unless it's Florida orange and blue. They'll be mad at me, but I'm very bullish on what Hugh Freeze can do, with the exception of a couple of games that look tricky on there. But I'm going to be going out on a limb with that a week from now.
And historically, he is a second-year coach. I mean, he is. His results in the second year have been fabulous.
The guy we have coming on the show with us next Friday coached with Hugh Freeze and was one of his top recruiters when he was at Ole Miss. It's going to be interesting. Had a great visit with this fella Monday night at the Memphis Touchdown Club. Let me say this, too, about one of our new sponsors, Coolmore Transportation and Logistics. Anything you need shipped, steel, lumber, steel coils, seed, cotton, anything, trucking, transportation, logistics, it's important. Everything gets delivered on a truck. Memphis-based with a global reach. If you've got a need to ship something from point A to point B, check them out. Coolmore, Coolmore, logistics.com. Great in Memphis. Robert Weaver in the crowd over there. Went and got a full tour of the operation last week. They've got computer screens set up in the offices. It looks like a trading floor in a securities firm up there. They find, Frank Duffy says, hey, I've got something in Atlanta that needs to be shipped to Spokane, Washington. They do the match. They post it, and their phone blows up. Coolmore Logistics, proud to have them as a sponsor here on Sidelines. Get moving. Get with them. Memphis-based with a global reach. Coolmore Logistics and Transportation.
By the way,
Doug,
I'm looking at that video. That's about where I had that blowout between Arizona and California out there. By the way, truckers are some of the best people in the world. Yeah. They are salt of the earth. They keep this country moving. I see a lot of them when I'm in the RV at the different truck stops to get my diesel. They are just the best salt of the earth people there are. They really are.
They really are. And my son is on his way out. He's going to go work in Sequoia National Park this summer.
Out
my
here.
youngest one, Max.
God. Gorgeous.
He's on the way from Oklahoma City to Albuquerque today. Maxwell Polk Brown, love you. He's watching the show. Not watching, he's driving, but heading out there to California. But he said it's amazing. They'll be up there in Sequoia National Park. Yeah, the oldest trees in the world. So I will be making a road trip out there later this summer to go see him. Doug and Frank, Doug, I'm with you, and I have to be very careful in my role on the show as a judge to not get too excited. But I'm in talking with, and you're seeing it. What you write, and Frank, the recruiting. All you got to do is just outwork people. It's pretty simple, but you got to be willing to do it. But I think the takeaways from today's show are, Billy Napier, you better be fighting a full 60 every Saturday, and it will help big if you can get that win. But that game you said October 5th, Doug, that's the one to keep your eyes on. Florida versus UCF.
It could be a biggie. The other thing that is that little voice in your head about what might be different, that maybe nothing will be different this year, and we'll get to enjoy, in quotations, Georgia and Alabama dominating the SEC, meeting again in Atlanta. Their fan bases would love that, and one of the two of them winning the national championship. But my instinct is that this is the year I love the term balance of power. This is the year with all the chaos and new factors like Texas and Oklahoma, changes to the schedule, no divisions, road trips and games that are back to back that are not fair. They're not designed to help you win both of them. But a lot of factors, new coaches like DeBoer. This is the year we start to see a shift in the balance of power. And so the question for me, and I'm not even making it about Auburn, which team that's not named Georgia or Alabama will rise up this year and make my comment accurate that we're starting to see a powerhouse emerge that might supplant either Georgia or Alabama or both of them.
Ole Miss, Texas.
Yeah.
Ole Miss, Texas.
But Texas has got to overcome those defensive line losses. Oklahoma lost their entire offensive line, but they've got Brent Venables, the defensive whiz. Oklahoma, it's going to be fun to watch. Sark, he's right, Sarkisian, the wide receivers, what they're doing at Texas. And look, once you start playing these games, all that's, goes out the window, and you're lining up against every one of these guys got a Division I scholarship. It changes. Doug and Frank, y'all are both pointing out, but people need to pay more attention to that.
You might have two new combatants in Atlanta than we've ever had.
Yeah. Doug?
Why not Mizzou, Rob?
Yeah.
Why not Mizzou?
Exactly. See, I'm in Memphis, and Dennis Dodd's a Mizzou grad. He was on the show with us the other day. Doug, Mizzou has that in-state. I know Florida's got it now, but you can sign. They've already got the number 5 or 6 player in the country, a kid out of suburb of Kansas City, I think around St. Joe, Independence, Missouri. I can't pronounce his name. Narwani, the edge rusher. I mean, Missouri's pumping some. Missouri, as Dennis Dodd said last Friday, they're pumping $250 million into one end zone for renovations. If they start getting their fans, I've always said this. I asked this to Eli Drinkowitz in Atlanta a couple of years ago at SEC Media Days. What if you could marry the passion of the St. Louis Cardinals Nation fan base in with Mizzou Tiger athletics? And he came over to me and he said, man, that's a great question. And I would love for that to happen. But that's the thing. You get people excited. I'm with Doug. A lot of people think last year was a flash in the pan with Missouri. I don't believe that. And I'm just looking at what they have on their roster. There you go. There's so many storylines, man. It's the SEC.
It's going to be a fascinating year. It really is. It's going to be a great year.
It got him fired. Okay, look, Doug Dean, Frank Duffy, Brendan Martin, our executive producer up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin on vacation. Man, Brendan, you're the best. And everybody, support our sponsor, sidelines.live. Have a great weekend. God bless America. We will see you Monday morning, 8 a.m. Central. Lots of college baseball on right now. Doug, who's going to win it all? And then Frank, and we're out of here. You got a pick?
I couldn't hear you on the audio.
Who's your pick to win the whole World Series? Who's your pick to win the College World Series? You got a pick?
Why not Florida at this point?
That's my pick. I think it's Florida's year.
Yeah. Fewest number of wins of anybody. Watch out for the Gators, man. All right. Hey,
out
of here. We'll see y'all Monday. All right. Take care. We'll see y'all Monday. Thank you.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shopp's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.